Because something is in the danger zone doesn't mean it's off limits. It just means that you should take additional precautions. We are going to talk about dating women between the ages of 29 and 35 and why it's in the danger zone, the duress that's inherent when a biological clock is ticking. This all changes. You're not thinking clearly. You're under duress, legally speaking. Under this stressful environment, women end up kind of selecting a mate, and they realize that this is not the lifestyle that they wanted, or maybe they chose the wrong partner. One of the worst things for you to do is to be in a danger zone, but then think you're safe. And welcome to another exciting episode of the Contemporary Happiness Podcast. I'm your host, David Nima. I'm an attorney by trade and a happiness coach. And in today's episode, we are going to talk about dating women between the ages of 29 and 35 and why it's in the danger zone. And if you're in this danger zone, what you should do about it and the kind of precautions that you should take. So let's get right into it. Now, the first premise here is that there's a danger zone to begin with, right? When it comes to dating women between 29 and 35. And the reason for this is because, broadly speaking, women at this age are under this tremendous pressure of the biological clock. They have a sense of urgency to have children. If you're a woman and you're watching this and you don't have children and you're in this age group, you want to have children, right? You want to have children and you're under a deadline. And that's important to recognize that, because what that does is that it completely clouds your judgment. When your priority is simply to give birth within a certain deadline or a certain time, then, your values start to change. You start to compromise differently than you otherwise would. Your decision making is different. This all changes. You're not thinking clearly. You're under duress, legally speaking. Right. And I think that's something to recognize. This is the result. They end up rushing into parenthood and they create this kind of ripple effect of decision making that was made under duress and pressure. Under this stressful environment, women end up kind of selecting a mate and they have a kid or two with them. And then 5 years later, or whatever years later, they realize this is not the lifestyle for them. They start to kind of feel the repercussions from the decisions that they made 10 years ago. They realize that this is not the lifestyle that they wanted, or maybe they chose the wrong partner. The results is a ripple effect of the decision making that was made under duress and pressure. What you end up having is, a husband and or children, that are caught in the middle of this. So the result of all this is ending up being in a bad marriage, wanting to get a divorce, wanting to maybe get away from your parental duties and not being the mother that you wanted to be or you thought that you wanted to be. And it then just ends up hurting the children, your significant other, yourself and your own life, and it has a tremendous ripple effect. So the question is how to approach this, right? Just because something is in the danger zone doesn't mean it's off limits. It just means that you should take additional precautions entering this danger zone. So what are some of the precautions that you can take if you're dating a woman between the ages of 29 and 35, or what I call the danger zone? Well, the first thing that you want to do is you want to kind of address the elephant in the room, right? You want to be very clear and communicate clearly that her priority is to have children, right? That's her priority. And she has to be absolutely clear about that. And, when you have a certain priority, you want to be clear that you're going to be making certain compromises that you otherwise wouldn't, because this is your priority. Address the elephant in the room in terms of her clouded judgment. It's absolutely clouded. It cannot be not clouded, right? Because she's under a biological deadline. She's under a biological ticking clock, and therefore she has clouded judgment. And then just see how she responds. If she agrees with you and says something to the effect of, hey, you know what? you're right. I am in this kind of hot pursuit to have children. And I understand that my decision making and my judgment may be skewed because of this super tight deadline and this priority that I have. Because if she answers that way, at least she's not in denial. Right? And then you can make an informed decision and take what's called a calculated risk proceeding with the relationship. But if she denies this, or if you're denying it, you're living in denial. And that's a huge, huge red flag. And I would probably stay away from that, from that danger zone. So this is all about self-awareness. You have to be self-aware of, the priorities that you're selecting in your life, why you're selecting those priorities, why you're prioritizing them, and the compromises and sacrifices that you are going to make to get to those priorities, whatever that priority is. And if you have this kind of unrelenting drive for anything, whether it's to get into medical school, whether it's to open a restaurant, whether it's to have children, whether it's to buy a Lamborghini, you have a drive for something, and that's totally fine. Everyone's entitled to their own passions and having enthusiasm for those passions. That's totally fine. But you got to be straight up about it. You got to be clear, and you can't be in denial. You need to have the self-awareness to say that, yes, this is my priority. These are the sacrifices I'm willing to make. I understand that these areas of my life may take a hit as a compromise for me to be able to obtain, my goal. I'm prioritizing. So it's very important, I think, to have that kind of conversation. If you're in this age group and your priority is to have children, you want to have this kind of candid conversation, which in my opinion, I think your judgment is clouded, and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, I think you want to be upfront about that versus, being in denial that your judgment is clouded. Because the last thing that when you're in the danger zone, and you've taken precautions, then you've potentially reduced risk. One of the worst things for you to do is to be in a danger zone, but then think you're safe. Right? Think about it in, just in any kind of situation where, there is danger, but you're not aware of the danger. So I think being aware of the danger by being self-aware and not being in denial about this prioritization towards children, which I think, again, results in a clouded judgment. Not being aware and not being upfront about that creates substantially more risk than just just being in the danger zone by itself. Life has risks. That's no question about that. But it's all about reducing risk, and to be in a kind of like I said, in this kind of red zone, this danger zone, but not being aware of it, and being in denial about it. That's the worst. And that's an absolute red flag. And I would certainly, proceed in that relationship with tremendous caution. The other option here is to date women outside of this age group, because then they're less likely to have this type of biological deadline and have this duress, that's imposed on the relationship to be able to do a certain thing by a certain time. Of course, in the bigger picture, my philosophy is that having children is not necessary to be happy. And you can have meaningful relationships with your romantic partners and with your friends and with your community and your neighbors, with a lot of other people than just your biological children. So certainly having children is not necessary for happiness. And if you can be open to adoption, what it does, it just frees you from this kind of duress and pressure to be having children within a certain time, and you can then pursue relationships and pursue your life, and choose to have children when you're ready, and make the right decisions, again, without the duress that's inherent when a biological clock is ticking. So that's a little bit about dating women in the danger zone, age 29 to 35. I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you think that there's anything that you disagree with or you do agree with, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.